next item by the sitting leader speaker, Abigail, to go to the next case.
Yes, I am. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason why this debate has been so confused is because while the opposition has got up here and told us that they have a problem with ghettos, a problem with access, they never acknowledged that the way to stop ghettos from happening is by forcing everyone to be in one shared space where competition can occur. The ghettos and exclusion happen when individuals are priced out of the city market and told that they should live where they can afford, whether that be Penrith, whether that be 2 hours out of Pale, but that was their space. What our proposition did was it told governments that they now had city limits, that they had to find space for all of those people within the cities, and that gave those governments an incentive the opposition acknowledged they don't have currently to gentrify areas, to encourage building up, just to make ghettos somewhere where people can live, because those people were still voters even if they were poor. We agreed with the vast majority of the first speaker's speech that individuals needed to live in societies that were run well, that were together, and what we thought was that by limiting space, you created an incentive to do that, you created a market to do that, you solved the problems the opposition acknowledged happen at the moment. So what did happen in this debate? Firstly, I'm going to talk to you about the effect on environment, because the opposition has been very, very inconsistent and unclear on that area. Secondly, I'm going to talk to you about the effects on cities that currently exist, and then lastly, the effect on small cities versus larger cities, that dynamic that their second speaker wanted to talk about. Firstly, in terms of the effect of the environment, the opposition got up here and they say large areas of humans create pressure on the environment because those people are all together. We told you a few reasons why that was false as first speaker. Because, quite simply, when you have a group of humans together, they use less resources. Not all of us need a car to drive to the city, which is 2 hours away, because we can walk. We might be living higher, but we're not using the same kind of resources. Moreover, the difference between multiplying the need for different things. So for example, having an air conditioner on each household rather than an effective one on each block. But lastly, the governments are incentivised to create efficient means of looking after their citizens when they have to. When they know that there's one source of water for that city and that city is this size and they can't go any further, it tells them they have to create a desalination plant. That it's worth investing in efficient means, which currently they have no incentive to do under the opposition's model. They then got up here and they said, well, Brazil is a false example because it's far away from the Amazon, which is just factually true, but that otherwise people want to move to the city, so that's not really an encroachment problem. We thought that was in tension, for starters, with the opposition's material on price about why people are forced out to the fringes of cities, how ghettos occur. But we secondly said Brazil is on a city limit where it is encroaching on the Amazon because poor people are pushed out, and they're the ones taking it down. Their response was that, well, grazing is also bad for the environment, you don't stop that. For starters, we did. But secondly, we said that grazing is far, far less environmental. Beyond methane, what do cows do, ladies and gentlemen? We thought that those kinds of uses for the environment were always going to be better. What they then got up here, and their main response on the environmental material, was that in this debate we have to make a value judgment. Do we love humans or do we love animals? And that's what they rested their cap on. We had a few responses. First of all, they're not mutually exclusive. We gave you material about why people can still live in these cities and we can save the environment. We said that secondly, the reason why this value judgment is always distorted is because people only live in their own lifetime. They don't see the accumulated harm that they do to the environment. But moreover, there's a collective action problem where I say, it'd be nice if less people had cars, but I refuse to not buy one myself. By putting this in legislation, we force people to acknowledge that collective problem. We also said, though, that you can move humans, you cannot move an ecosystem. So our first speaker gave you a range of examples. You can't move a water table, you can't change the soil density, but you know what you can do is build more concrete walls that put more humans into them. We thought that in a calculus where the environment was vulnerable, where humans were malleable, it was fundamentally important that we protect the environment which is owned collectively. The then material that went on was the effect of the city. We thought this was fundamentally wrong. We think that at this point the debate probably relies on them proving that ghettoisation and all those harms wouldn't occur. What we told you is that these individuals who live in these cities are voters. They're people who the government is still accountable to. So when the government has city limits put onto it, they have incentives that they otherwise don't have to create houses for those individuals. They now have an incentive to go into ghettos and say, this is incredibly inefficient. The boundary is here. Let's build these ghettos up, make them more efficient, because we know we sure as hell can't go further than them in the future. It gets governments to create a market so that the rich people who currently operate in a different market have the incentives to subdivide their land, right? Because multiple poor people now can't move to Penrith, now can't move 2 hours out, and have an incentive to buy smaller plots of land in the city, which uses that land more efficiently. We told you on our side of the house that all the problems about large, sprawling cities, about commuting to jobs, occur when you can have sprawling cities, where there isn't a line where the government can't say, we wish we could use that land, or you're so poor you should live further out, that's your fault. Stop aspiring to wherever is rich around here. Anyway, it tells those people that they have to find a space for them in their cities. We offered that at first, there's been no response at second. But when do ghettos occur, ladies and gentlemen? They occur when the city gets larger and they are pushed out of their houses because now the Rocks is a hip and fancy place to live because city limits have gotten larger. When the government does say you should live according to your budget and your budget dictates you don't live here. We pointed to cities like Manhattan, right, where people couldn't live in the ocean, so they learned to get along and live in a smaller space in more efficient and effective ways. But what did they lastly talk about? Large cities versus small cities. They got up here and they said that, what the problem is monopolies, that these smaller cities where people go to live in will be have high unemployment. We thought that was false for a few reasons. For starters, when you create smaller cities, you automatically create industry because there's a labour force there. And it's more competitive, right? Because you don't have a variety of different actors who you have to undercut. We thought small cities often had centres of economy. But also, these weren't just new cities. We were redistributing people to other cities that currently exist that are dying because of the sprawl that they were having to stand by. We thought that small cities were still good cities, and wherever a city, I've said that word too many times, occurs that is not on an environmental patch of land, we should encourage it. This was a comparative debate. They need to start comparing. So, onto my material. The opposition wanted to get up here and tell you that the problem with ghettoisation is that people push out, that people live on the fringes. I'm going to expand, although I've mentioned it in the rebuttal, about ghettos and why having a single shared city rather than a large, enigmatic block that is constantly changing changes cultural aspects and puts more accountability on the government. So firstly, we think that when you have a shared city space, where now the poor people only live down the road and not 2 hours out because they have been forced to by a city limit, we think that that forces interaction between rich and poor people groups, between ethnic groups that often live in isolation and aren't forced to integrate with each other or communicate with each other. We think that you get situations more like Sydney, where in the inner city you have Chinatown, you have Leichhardt, which is Little Italy, but they still work mutually because it is a shared space and no one group can expel the other and tell them that their place is further away in a different economic zone. We think our model, by forcing people to live in smaller set sections, forces interaction and creates a stronger cultural cohesion and development and identity for that city. But moreover, we think that that identity then helps to hold the government to account. Because under the opposition's model, what we see is governments who are in financial dire straits saying to themselves, well, we don't want to tax, that doesn't get us votes. What we'll do is just sell off a little bit more land on the edge. We'll make up that money by privatising space. What we do is by forcing bans, is tell people that this was a land that was shared by them and their government sold it off, disbanded it, didn't just release it, but had to take down legislation to make that area free for exploitation. We let those people have ownership of their land, have ownership of each other, and live together in areas that do not compromise the environment for which we all share. Thank you.